Cartoonland Nightmare. A Salvia Divinorum trip report by London. Posted to earwig.org, July 12, 2003. I've tried Salvia twice. First time was positive. The second, negative. I'm not a lover of hallucinogenics generally, but was attracted to Salvia as our research had showed trips generally last under 15 minutes. My first experience of smoking Salvia was while on holiday in Amsterdam. At the time, I was very relaxed and very stoned. I took one very small hit from our pipe, as did my boyfriend at the time, and as we were stoned, and a bit tired anyway, we both fell asleep in our private hostel room. That particular experience was mild. I simply lay with my eyes closed and got the sensation that all the knowledge I had accumulated so far in life lined the inside of my skull very thinly. I remember thinking just how much space was in my head to fill with knowledge, and that I may never fill it completely, no matter how much I learnt about anything. I woke up about an hour later, and I felt uplifted at this new thought I was having, and have since made sure I learn in each and everything I do and experience. This first Salvia trip was, as I say, mild and pleasant. To heavy-duty trippers, this would have been a non-trip, but to me, generally just a smoker, this was an uplifting and intriguing experience. My second was a different matter altogether. Once home from the Netherlands, I tried Salvia properly. Said boyfriend was there and promised to be my sober sitter. I was in his room at the time and had a joint or two that afternoon, but was not too stoned. I took one hit of the Salvia. The smoke was easy, and I thought it actually tasted quite nice. I waited around for 2 to 3 minutes, only experiencing slightly heightened visual perception. This stayed long after the trip itself. A slight shimmering of colours, no more. Second hit. Instantly I get this hot and cold feeling enveloping my skin, feverish, and I remove my jumper. This removed the skin sensation mostly. This was maybe 30 seconds in, and this is when my sight started to go. I was sitting on his bed, his quilt was a flower pattern, and when I heard his voice ask, "Where are you?" I answered, "The garden," although I wasn't sure that I was actually in the garden, but knew I saw some flowers. Although, to my knowledge, I hadn't said any more. Save a brief description of flat colours in the room, I must have looked happy or blissed out, as my boyfriend announced, "Oh, this looks good, I might do some too," or something to that effect. Well, now, this is when it all turned negative. I cannot stress to you enough how important it is to have a sitter you can trust. I thought I could trust him, we'd been together a year, and yet he was voicing inclinations to join me. This unfortunately was enough to panic me so badly my trip immediately got worse. I remember asking him not to, and after what seemed like 10 seconds, he relented and said okay. He wouldn't do it. But unfortunately for me, it was too late. I later found out that those 10 seconds were, in reality, almost 10 minutes of me sitting on his bed, pleading over and over with him not to do it, tears rolling down my face. I had no idea I'd even done this. Now, I'm not blaming this boy directly for what was to come, but I'm positive my trip would not have been as bad were he not to have shaken things up while I was up. Everything in the room lacked texture, which is contrary to some reports I've read about this drug. All colour became flat, no shadows, no texture. A flat painting is what it's called in art, a bit like cartoons are drawn. 2 of the walls started to dominate, and suddenly I found myself in a cartoon world, where I stood in the middle of a long corridor. Only the floor on which I stood was no more than a line. The walls were so close together, I realised I too must be two-dimensional in order to survive between what seemed like 1 millimetre between the walls. I became claustrophobic and panicky when I realised I didn't know where I was and couldn't get out of wherever I was. I tried to verbalise this to my boyfriend. This was when I realised my hearing had also gone, as I could not hear anything in return. And with the realisation that 2 of my senses had left me, I truly started to panic. My boyfriend must have come within my visual field, but was denoted in my mind as that evil laughing cartoon character with the glossy hair and big red buttons on his coat. At no stage during this did I remember I had taken Salvia at all. Apparently, he was trying to remind me. Alas, I couldn't hear him. After about 15 minutes, when I could just make out the door to his room as being a door and not a cartoon door, I felt a strong compulsion to move around. I was led by him, through the house as he tried to calm me by pointing out, "Here's the fridge, the TV, the table. See, it's there, it's alright." But as soon as things became clearer to the eye, they would slip back into cartoon world, and I would stand still, shock in horror, or look away in horror. I distinctly remember the kitchen cupboards varying between real cupboards and cartoon cupboards, and each time they became the latter, well, I just had to look away. Superficially, the effects lasted about 20 real minutes. I was able to sleep that night, though fitfully. On a deeper level, the effects of that trip have lasted much longer. I have not taken Salvia since. After it, I was in a state of deep shock for 2 days, and extremely scared for about a week afterward. I felt that at any moment, I could slip back into the cartoon hell. I cannot tell you how incredibly scary a cartoon world can be when you just don't know how to leave it. I've gone into a lot of detail here which may not interest experienced trippers, but I'm writing this from the point of view of a relatively inexperienced tripper, for people like me who haven't taken many trips but who are interested in trying Salvia. Now, this is a substance in a league of its own. If you do insist on doing this, please research it. Read all the accounts on this site and others. I did not research it enough and had to face the consequences. Secondly, have a trustworthy sitter. I cannot stress this enough. It can be the difference between a good and a bad experience. In some cases, it can also be the difference between life and death. Thirdly, anyone with any history of anxiety, claustrophobia, or mental instability should think very hard about taking Salvia, and possibly don't even bother. I had the first two, and after doing it, had the third for quite a while. And finally, if you're of a sensitive disposition at all, just don't. Anyways, wishing you all pleasant Salvia experiences. Really wishing. Peace. This is an interesting report because this is the only Salvia report I've ever been able to relate to. I'll link it in the description. I talked a while ago about my first and only time ever taking Salvia, and probably my only time I'll ever bother taking it in this lifetime. But yeah, I think it was a 15x extract or 20x, and I just had the one hit of it. Bear in mind that this was before I'd taken any hallucinogenic substance. I'd only ever drank and smoked weed a bit. It was really quite bizarre how it came out. I definitely recommend to check out the full video where I go more into detail of how I got into that scenario. But yeah, the main effect I had was that I experienced my perception shifted into a 2D form. Although the contrast between my experience and this girl's is I didn't experience myself as two-dimensional. I still was three-dimensional, but my perception, my cone of vision flipped upwards and became flat. Everything still had the same textures and everything, but it was like I was experiencing life in a bird's eye view. And this was the first ever time I experienced an altered state. And let me tell you, at that moment, I was just like, whoa. Consciousness goes way deeper than just this sober, waking state, doesn't it? And then over the years, I've realised that the rabbit hole is basically infinitely deep for what consciousness can experience. Because, I mean, on the meta level, I guess, God, the universe, infinity is without limits, so it can literally experience anything. This is why people can turn into a pen on Salvia, or experience life two-dimensionally, experience life as a cartoon, anything. It really is quite bewildering. By far the most insanely surreal, weird, strange, hallucinogenic of all time is Salvia. And it's my favourite one to do the reports on, because it's just so wacky and out there. Yeah, it gives me a glimpse into it without actually having to do it myself. I must say, yeah, I know a lot of people are curious to try it out, but you must bear in mind that curiosity killed the cat. You might think going into it that, yeah, I can handle it, but living an eternity as a Ferris wheel isn't so good, to be honest. I don't even need to experience that to know that fully. The amount of reports I've read where people come back from these Salvia trips living in eternity, and they're completely shook up for life, and it can completely unground them from what is the bulk of your experience in life. It's this sober waking state, and it's very fragile, so don't mess around with it. But yeah, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Check out the Vivec Discord, my Instagram, and hope you're enjoying the reports, because I know I enjoy making them. Anyway, I'll see you on the other side. This is Money.